recording. Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for your patience. We have a very magical group of authors, and because of that, as you have all heard me make this horrible joke many a time, magic and technology don't work. So thus, of course, we had some technological issues, but we are all here, and I am so freaking excited. First off, a very large virtual round of applause because the Devil You Know is officially out in the world. So a very big congratulations. And I feel like the authors we have really don't need much of an introduction, but you are going to get one anyways because they deserve an introduction even if you already know who they are. So to my left-hand side is Kit Rocha, also the writing duo Donna and Bree. I'm trying to point. I'm not doing the best job. But they are known for their sexy dystopian Beyond series, as well as the current series that we are celebrating today. Now, The Devil You Know is book 2 in the Mercenary Librarian series, where you have kick-ass librarians who use their knowledge to save, like, the world and help with people, which is just like, oh my gosh, yes, get the t-shirt. What?
Merch.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So this series is just an amazing post-apocalyptic world that is full of action as well as some romance, all of the good things. And then rocking the amazing shirt down below, we have Tessa Dare, who's a New York Times best-selling historical romance author known for her Girl Meets Duke series, as well as many, many other amazing stories. And then right down below me, we have Shelley Parker-Chan, and I'm really excited because she has an upcoming She Who Became the Sun. And now this is described as a Mulan meets the Song of Achilles in a bold, queer, and lyrical...
I have a tiny copy of it.
Oh my gosh. It's so small on the screen. I was like, she's laughing, and I don't know if she's laughing.
It's my tiny copy.
The Song of Achilles.
I made the tiniest copy of She Who Became the Sun. Because I'm going to eventually try to hold up all three. I'm gonna, but I don't have the wrist strength the rest of you do.
But yes. So in a non-tiny format, in a readable version, She Who Became the Sun. It's an awesome retelling about the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty. And on that note, I'm going to go over some house rules real quick, everyone. The comment section is to the right-hand side where you all have been sharing all of the book love. Please keep it coming. We love getting to interact with y'all. And speaking of interacting, if you have questions for the amazing authors, if you look down below, there's a beautiful button that says Ask a Question. I would highly encourage you to not only click that button, but to also submit whatever questions you have burning in your mind. Events are fun because it's your opportunity to pry the mysterious, sometimes scary, but brilliant brain of an author and be like, tell me, how, why, answer me now. So make sure you ask questions down below. No spoilers, though. And then also, too, last but not least important, if you wish to support these authors and book 2, The Devil You Know, there will be a beautiful purchase book button down below. And you get a special swag pack when you order the book through us. We have the necklaces come into the store, and I'm just going to say they are so freaking cool. But so there are special necklaces that you will get. You'll get a signed book plate, annotated maps, art, postcards, stickers, and the book plate, which I already said. But it's just, it's such a good package. Now, on that note, I'm going to stop rambling because without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to your authors. Have an amazing event, everyone, and happy book birthday to The Devil You Know.
Thank you.
I'll see you again.
No, it's just us.
Hey! I'm so excited that all 4 of us are like here on camera.
We made it.
I thought it wasn't going to happen.
We made it, and the teacher's out of the room.
Gonna get in trouble.
It's time to go wild.
Who has been left in charge? This is
but always creepily watching and listening.
Oh no!
The voice of God.
We're being surveilled.
I put Tessa in charge.
Oh, okay. I get to be in charge of, I get to boss Brie around a lot, but it's
Yes.
usually because she has decided to do some amazing thing that it will be really difficult to take on. And I want her to save her emotional and physical energy for writing. And so I'd like yell at her like, Brie, stop. And then sometimes that works. And a lot of times it doesn't, but I try all my caps, as many as I've got, which is like 26. But
if it doesn't work, I'll just go sit on her, like literally sit on her.
It can be hard to corral a wild Brie in an ADHD spiral.
Well, that's what it's also why we love you.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, if I'm in charge, I think maybe you should, one of you, start by telling us a little bit about the Mercenary Librarian series and The Devil You Know in particular.
Donna, you get to go first.
It is The Devil You Know, right? I saw you tweeting the other, all the devil titles, right? They start to, it's The Devil You Know.
Yeah.
Right. Deal with the devil in the first one.
Yes.
We'll talk about the third later.
Yes. The series at large, I've got it in my brain because we're working on it right now. The series at large, the Mercenary Librarian series, is set in Atlanta. If you've read our Beyond series, then you are familiar with the apocalyptic events that have taken place because it's the same universe, just a different part of the former country. And we have Nina and her squad, which consists of Maya and also Danny. And they basically are post-apocalyptic archivists and community librarians. They help people find information and resources that they might need to essentially like make their lives better. You know, if they need to repair an appliance, or if they need to find information on, you know, the growing season for kale in, you know, Atlanta, then that's what Nina, Maya, and Danny help with. And on the other hand, they're as of book 2, their new compatriots, the Silver Devils, are basically they've gone AWOL. They've run away from the military police force that is run quite brutally by the tech conglomerate that pretty much owns Atlanta. You know, it's the return of the company store on a massive level. And I think that our combined crews now, as of book 2, have something to say about that.
Boo capitalism.
Yeah, that's what they have to say about that. Yeah.
I'm very articulate tonight, as you can tell.
Me too. I'm so sorry. I'm like rambling. I'm like, here's what the entire series is about. Let me just talk about it for a while. And say nothing for real interest. I should have read something. It's been a very long day. Bree, I talked about the series in general. Why don't you talk a little bit about Gray and Maya? See, I turned the delegation around on you.
Okay, so book 2 is Gray and Maya. And Maya she is the non-super powered of the trio. She's the only one who doesn't have super strength or ass-kicking skills, or is in general, you know, somehow genetically enhanced in a combat way. But she does have perfect recall and a big magical brain that can do amazing things. And one of the things, the most important part about her is that she was raised by a vice president of the big scary company to be her basically living memo book, her archive of secrets, dark, terrible company secrets. So she escaped with all the necessary information to do some damage to these people. And she's been living a pretty quiet life, sort of, you know, recovering, likes to play with metadata, you know, archive books, hang out in the community. And The Devil You Know kind of brings her face to face with her past, and whether or not she's content to just sit on the sidelines when she has all of this knowledge that can be real power. And part of what motivates her is that this nice guy named Gray, who she is starting to have squishy feelings for, is dying because of what the genetic enhancements they gave him. So she's got a lot of motivation. She wants to save him. She wants to save everyone. So that's what she's going to try to do. Save the world. Nothing big, just little goals.
Tiny
She kind of reminds me of somebody in this chat. No, I mean, actually, she did. Like, one of the things I love about I'm a former librarian, so like where she sits down and is, answering 15 reference questions, going through the reference interview like a good librarian would. There's like 3 people in this chat will get that joke. And but I love that she has this connection to having read fantasy as a kid and that being so important to her. And I thought that was like a cool thing that maybe we could chat about since we have a fantasy author with us, Shelly.
Yes.
And
a fantasy author who wrote a pretty amazing book about rebelling against, literally everything.
I think of myself as one of you guys. I think of myself as a romance author who accidentally wrote a non-romance book. So that's why I was like, ooh, my people.
You are. See, and you know what? I think that, and I have read She Who Became the Sun, and I've got to say that, like, I think that there's a way that romance trains you to deeply dive into just the emotional rawness of characters. And I'm not surprised you're one of us, because you've got that. You've got that just that messy, but you still love them sort of delicious thing where you can expose a character's flaws, but you still want good, wonderful things for them.
We know how to dive into the id, into the feels, dig it all up, all the ugly stuff, the messy stuff, the dynamic. What's the dynamic in The Devil You Know between Gray and Maya?
It is the protector and the skittish. Maya definitely, I mean, she gets overwhelmed. She remembers everything. So she gets sensory sort of overwhelmed. She doesn't like to get close to a lot of people. She's a little skittish. She's a little concerned that this man who she has such strong feelings for will completely overwhelm her. And he is the gentle. I sort of always had this image when we were started to write the book, is he's the one who will just sit there very patiently and be very careful and he's very tender with her, which I think writing books during a pandemic, that was sort of, you really wanted someone who was going to be gentle with your extreme vulnerabilities, because I don't know if it was just me, but I was feeling a little raw last year,
Oh, ongoing. But because your book is set in a dystopia, I think, that's definitely that really nice balance of having someone who'll be there for your trauma in a very difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean it is definitely, we've had books where the characters are very much against each other, like clashing, and this is definitely a slow burn where it's more, how do I protect you from this horrifying world that we're in, and also how do I face that sometimes I can't, because sometimes you can't.
Part of Gray's thing, like as a character, is that he's very, in book 1, he's very blunt with Knox. When Knox especially is like sort of, spends a lot of time, I don't want to say lying to himself, but basically lying to himself. And, Gray is very upfront with, the other guys when they're doing that sort of thing. But his thing is not necessarily like, I think that you could easily look at that and you could say, oh, that's his thing. He's a very, blunt, almost brutally honest person, but he's not, because he's blunt with people who need it, and he's very careful with people who need that. So he's very responsive to he's a good communicator, a weirdly good communicator for someone who doesn't talk very much. because he knows how to communicate with people. And it's actually, I don't know, is his past like a spoiler? I don't think, generally speaking.
Not really.
He grew up in Atlanta in an orphanage. He was orphaned at a very young age, and he grew up in an orphanage. And so his communication skills and his responsiveness, like, they don't come from a great happy place. Like, he's not like, he doesn't do it because he's very well adjusted. All of the Silver Devils, just like their mercenary librarians, they have, trauma, and they have, I would say it's not even in their past necessarily. They're still dealing with it. It's ongoing. And part of has turned him into a great communicator. And it was nice because that ability of his came from such a bad, painful place, to see him do something good with it in relating to Maya, to see him use it to help her and to help himself, instead of just, acting his pain, basically. So.
That shows
really
a really
enjoying this
strong
turn.
person. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say how that shows such a strong person who comes from, was every reason to be, very maladjusted and lash out in destructive ways in relationships, but has overcome that and decided or learned to, words, what are they? Shelley, what were you saying?
I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I was just going to say I'm really enjoying this turn towards like highly communicative love interests in romances that I've been reading lately. And like you said, it's not necessarily that they've even resolved their trauma. It can still be there and really present.
Mm-hmm.
But like the fact they can talk about it is really interesting to me, because we had such a phase of the hero who's all bottled up and can never say a word. And actually my heroes kind of fall into that category of like they just cannot communicate and everything is terrible. But I was reading as a spoiler alert by Olivia Dade lately, and they're just such good communicators, and it was so refreshing and interesting to me that it doesn't actually reduce the romantic tension, but sort of keeps it going in a really interesting, refreshing way, because they can talk it through and like the issues are still there, but it's not just this one big blocked up secret that can get a bit tedious over time.
Right.
Yeah, I do think that it's interesting, because I think a lot of people have a habit to say, oh, why don't you guys just talk to each other, as if that is a thing any of us do in real life, and then immediately things are resolved. I mean, you can talk and still have it be. I mean, none of us are, going to immediately just, oh, well, everything's fixed now. That was the end of that. It was wonderful. It's part of a long, ongoing process to continue to communicate, to continue to understand someone, especially when you're going through like trauma, ongoing, seriously traumatic times. And I mean, I'm not saying that I have super enjoyed writing apocalypses during whatever this is. There are times when I'm like, I would like to stop having to go on Google and search what terrible things that like tech bros are doing this week, and finding out that like my worst imaginations are nothing compared to what they actually did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to go write a fantasy for a little while, just at least just something where I don't have to Google tech guys for a bit. But
that's been so hard. Look, okay, let me tell you one thing. Don't write a dystopian series. Just don't do it. Especially one that is like heavily reliant on the exploration of the power that technological companies would gather in a situation like that, because you will be trying to name things and it's impossible, because all of the dude bros in Silicon Valley have already taken all of the names. Every iteration of letters that you could put together to be vaguely techie, sciencey set. No, they've taken them all. They've taken them all, and they have no sense of irony or shame. They just take them all and they
Every
use them.
evil corporation you can imagine is already out there doing weirdly evil stuff. It's like she was trying to name the company that was, you know, smuggling bioengineered children, and the first like 15 names she came up with exist. And from their web pages, I believe that they might think that was
might
a cool
be doing
thing to
it.
do. So yeah, that was one thing we learned. I don't know how anyone's going to name their evil companies going forward, because there's definitely a trademark issue.
Wait, what was the Elizabeth? What's her name? Was it Thanatos? Was that the name of her evil company that was doing blood tests?
Yeah,
I was like, is that not a terrible, ominous name that's dooming
It
your company
really
to evil?
There's no self-awareness. I'm not really sure what they're doing.
Well, Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated was taken, so
So,
No. She's on trial right now.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah, I
obsessed
mean,
with
she
that
just.
stuff.
I read a tweet about her actually the other day that was really funny. It was just like blood, death, money, and everybody opened their wallets, and I was like, yeah, that's what happened. Like, what is going on over there, you guys?
I didn't open my wallet. A bunch of venture capitalists did. It wasn't
Which
me.
we are ironically today, we're writing a futuristic venture capitalist party that
That's
our
true, we
hero
are.
and heroine are undercover at. And like, I know that it just can't be as evil as what's actually going on, but we're trying.
We are absolutely trying to come up with evil things that people could like pitch to them, and we're just, I mean, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
want to get
you know,
sued
because
for
you're not
copyright
evil.
infringement.
It's hard to write a satire when it's already a satire.
Yeah.
Like someone was saying, this Silicon Valley, the TV show, and Portlandia, the TV show, are both basically true. They're both basically documentaries.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much.
it's hard.
So yes, next we're gonna write a fantasy, and so are you guys.
Please.
Fantasy romance for all
Fantasy
of us.
romance is where it's all at.
Yeah, let's
I've
all
read
do
so many
that.
great fantasy romances, and they're all coming out. It's
There's actually been
it's
like
the
I
bandwagon.
feel like this is the year. This is the year that it starts to break open. I have really felt blessed recently with like the fantasy romance. I mean, there's always been a trickle of them out there, but it really seems like it's gaining some momentum. So we definitely need to make Tessa write one.
Dude,
Tessa?
you have no idea how much money I would pay for that.
No, I
no
already
idea.
do. Regency is a fantasy land,
It
as we
is.
read it in
I was
romance.
just saying that to someone the
I
other
mean-
day. Regency is like the shared sandbox. It's
It really is.
fantasy
It's a
with,
shared
like,
fandom.
rules.
I have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I give
Exactly.
Tessa's books to fantasy fans all the time because I read them as a fantasy fan. Like, it's just, there's no magic, but it's still like the best fantasy book you're ever going to read. There's castles. And,
Aw. Yeah,
So-
there are castles. And yeah, that's really it. And dukes. I mean, the hot
A
dukes are totally a
fantastical number of
fantasy.
dukes.
Yes,
Have you seen a real
exactly.
duke? Do you know what they look like? Yeah.
Better
How
dukes.
many?
Not in person, but I have looked at photos and they weren't inspiring. Let's just say that. They weren't going on the vision board.
Are you not
That's
into
what-
tweed, Tessa? Are you not into tweed and gun dogs and galoshes?
Oh my goodness.
It's amazing
It's-
the number of dukes in Regency romance. It's just like millions by now.
That's what I
And
said.
they're like,
okay with
settle
it,
for
I
an
mean.
earl.
Well, yeah, we occasionally there are earls and viscounts and marquises, but nothing sells a book like a duke.
Okay, but like, I remember when I realized that your Girl Meets Duke series was not going to be all dukes, but sometimes they're just like people named Duke, and I was like, Tessa,
Yeah, this bait and switch.
you
And one who's an
witty,
heir to
witty,
a
saucy.
Duke.
So
Well,
yeah, I
because-
love
I love it though. I love it.
It's just it like Shelly said, it's a shared sandbox. It's like a fandom. We're all writing in a a world that has established rules and a canon to it of sorts, and it's just sort of a place where I like to think of it as like it's a fantasy world, but with very low entry point as to world building. Because mostly when you go into, it's just enough to kind of escape and feel like it's a different place and different time. And there are different rules, but they're sort of known to most readers already. So if you've read a couple of Regency romances, you will know, or watch Bridgerton or something, you will know the basics of the world building. Whereas I am just always amazed by fantasy authors who world build from scratch. And, fantasy romance authors like Bree and Donna, Kit, collectively, like how about creating a world where out of whole cloth?
Well, see, I feel like we are actually, I mean, I will say this in here, just between us and the 108 people or whatever who are registered, that we are doing a fantasy proposal after we finish this next book. So we have a fantasy romance, and Tessa's actually seen, I photoshopped so many pictures, I'm just going to shove them all in the proposal, and Tessa has seen some of them. So that's the first time in a really long time we've actually built a world. And when I say built a world, I mean, I hired Courtney Milan's sister to use astronomy to build us a world. And she's sending me like moon graphs of with math and astronomy. So, I mean, built a world.
Yeah.
And
well, I think a dystopia is like building a world too.
It is.
Or you can take so many aspects of it. The biggest difference is that instead of creating it whole cloth, you're sort of piecing it together like a quilt, and you're having to change out things that will be different. So there's a little bit more I guess just like extrapolation. And that's why there are so many people, like I think I saw somebody say in the chat that like a lot of the stuff in like Beyond and the Mercenary Librarian series seem kind of eerily prescient. Well, they're not. I mean, like, we don't know the future. We just, read science journals and look at things and see what people are doing, like where the science is going, and we extrapolate it from there. And so I'm really tired of that kind of because it can be very, I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but some of the stuff lately, not great. Not great. So
no, like in 2012, we decided to set the Beyond world to the east of Reno, which was a smart city that people were going to build. And like last year, somebody announced that a bunch of rich people have decided they're going to try to build a smart city east of Reno. And I was like, nope, shut it down. We're switching to a different genre. That's enough. It's us and Alyssa Cole. We need to stop this witchcraft.
Yeah. Okay, that was a long shot. That was not extrapolation. We did not see that come in.
No, that was where I was like, maybe I am a witch. We need to
puppies and
universal
rainbows.
Health care in our next book.
Universal health care, basic income, puppies and rainbows. That's what we're doing.
So
no, I would like to I would like to really kind of wrap my head around, everything from scratch, building it from the ground up and not just having to sort of, do a multiverse thing where I see where we veered it off and what have you. I would like to, really dig in there. And my favorite thing about the world building is making sure that it makes sense. I mean, like there's a lot, people spend a lot of time on, especially in like fantasy stuff, on like magic systems and how this works and that works, and like how do you feed people? How do they eat? Like where does that come from? Like who is handling the animal husbandry? What's going on? What is your economy like? What kind of economy do you have?
One reason I love reading fantasy romance, what are your relationships look like? Because I feel like one of the things that makes me saddest is when people spend all this time world building a civilization and never re-examine how people interact, how they
Mm.
come together, what love looks like. I mean, they just sort of import a bunch of unexamined prejudices. And
Yeah,
then you're
it's
sort of
all-
like,
Our society.
wow,
laid,
this looks
like a
nothing like our
veneer.
world, except for they have all the weird baggage we do. That's odd.
Yeah.
This is where I stand up and show off my Ursula Le Guin t-shirt.
Yes.
Like she did the amazing, like, let's re-examine relationships from scratch and just like build an entirely new kind of family unit. That was really cool.
Yes.
I
And
love
I
it.
feel
what
like
you can do.
you kind of did what we did just way back in the past, because you sort of took the world and expanded on it and tweaked it, right? Like, how did you approach that?
I feel like I really resonated with what Tessa was saying about Regency romance, and that's often how I explain the shared world of Chinese historical dramas. It's a
Mhm.
shared sandbox, and everyone kind of understands the rules already. You know what an emperor is like, and you know all like the people who shuffle around in a palace, and you know how the intrigues and battles for power generally play out. And then it's just a matter of like tailoring it to your specific characters. So I didn't have to world build a lot. What I did have to do was try and explain that concept of that shared like sandbox to people in Western publishing who hadn't watched a lot of these Chinese dramas. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like I don't have to word build. Like, don't you understand? Like, this is what they're all like. I'm just like building off the tropes. So eventually I started saying, think of it like a Regency romance. That's what it's doing. So I like when I think about the kind of world building that you're planning to do, I'm just like, no, that is too hard. Building everything from scratch, like the economy and relationships and society.
See,
I think a lot of
actually
fantasy
love
doesn't-
that. I think, but I think
Well,
I
I think
awesome.
that's like. I think a lot of fantasy authors take the cheating route out. So you're doing it like really building it from the ground up, and that's really cool. But I think fantasy novels too have their little sandbox, you know, the shared.
Oh, yeah.
like,
Oh,
here's my
absolutely.
quasi-medieval society. I just
I've
have
read all the
moral bits from history.
farmers becoming kings. I know the,
Yep.
and I mean, anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I love my Robert Jordan. He's one of my childhood people who I've carried with me, so I'm always excited about this TV show. But I also like, you know, there aren't that many series from back then that are like that I have carried forward. And, you know, I sort of drifted away from the genre until I started picking up the stuff that's being published now and going, holy crap, this is the fantasy, you know, that I was finding. I was having to work so hard to find it, you know, when I was a young woman. And now it's just like falling into my hands, like beautiful from the sky. So, you know.
By the way, everyone watching, anybody who wants a watch buddy for the Wheel of Time series, Bree is your Huckleberry. She's dying for it. Dying for it.
Donna's like, please make her stop talking to
Like,
me.
no, it's not that. It's just like I was not a fantasy reader growing up. Like, I read a lot of horror. I read a lot of romance. I read some mystery. I did a little bit of sci-fi, not fantasy. So I am very new to it. And that is a thing I can't tackle it now. I can't do it now. Like, I've been reading recent stuff. I can't with that. It's just
I
there's
don't
so
usually
much
go
of it.
back. Like, I feel like our nostalgic 15-year-old favorites, I mean, there aren't a ton of them that you want to hand to someone in 2021 and be like, hey, look. You know,
Well,
I
but
mean,
also there's so many words. I don't have time. I have children. I have a job.
there are so many
Back
words.
to 400
It's
page
so
fantasy.
true. It's so true.
Yeah,
my
a
gosh.
romance you can read in the night, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Oh, we should ask some questions.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
So I think I've been tasked with being the question asker. So I want to ask you some questions from the
Oh,
the
questions.
list. Ooh. I'm going to ask this one because it is really interesting to me. Was it planned for both Maya and Gray to be on the ace spectrum, or is that just how the characters developed? This is from LB.
You want to go first on, or should I?
I will go first.
Okay.
I did plan for I don't think that because of, you know, the nature of the world. I don't think that it's something that Gray has ever necessarily like considered and thought about, sat there and said, I'm on the ACE spectrum. I don't think that he grew up in an environment where that was really, somebody was like, so, let's talk about, these things and these, options and these, potential ways that you might feel, he just didn't have that. So I don't think it's something he considered, but it is something I considered. There's a little hint. There are a couple little things that are in book 1. If you, went back and like looked, you would see it now. But there are some hints about how, Gray doesn't get distracted by like romantic or sexual stuff, when they're like on missions, and he, is pretty much like a loner. He's not, doesn't spend a lot of time, involved in looking for dates and what have you. And it's something that I personally wanted to do because I personally feel a pretty deep connection with that aspect of his character, and I really wanted to explore it. It's not a thing that I often like get to do because most of, the characters that I tend to write, they are like, fairly sexual romantic people. But I'm really not. And I wanted to like, have a bit of that. And Gray was the perfect person because I certainly wasn't going to be able to do it with Danny. So yes, it was planned. There are hints about it in book 1, and I really, really like the way that it turned out. Now you go, Bree.
Maya was planned. Maya's got like multiple things going on. I mean, part of it is just that like she doesn't like people in her personal space because she gets overwhelmed easily. But also she is attracted to people when she knows them and likes them. That's just her thing. She's not interested. I mean, hot people are fun to look at, but that's just, and that's always her thing. She talks about it in book 1. It's there if you pay attention to what she says. She just, that's just who she is, and it's, it's cool, and it was planned, and it was just, fun to get to let her be. And I've had characters like that before who are, sort of, I relate to that, I mean, I always think about the thing that I say, like, I never understood the hunky romance covers that had the heads cut off. Because I was always like, who are they? Give me a costume. Give me a story. Tell me why I think this person is hot. It's just,
want some eyes to look at, man.
So that is how I would say Maya wants the pirate costume or the cowboy costume or the knight costume. She wants to know who this person is. She doesn't just want, a hot person.
I really like the fact that also Nina and Danny, even though they both are like very sexual people, are like, fully supportive of Maya doing her thing. And, they don't try to push her to, like, they don't assume that all of her reticence to like, get close to people is about her, easily overloaded senses. Like they're just like, hey, you like what you like, you want what you want, you don't want what you don't want, that's fine, you're you, be you. And that was really important for us to put in the series as well, because you want what you want, you don't want what you don't want, and that's fine. That is fine.
Sex positivity isn't positive if you can't say no.
Right.
Yeah. So
put that on a bracelet, Bree.
That's too many words.
You could do it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask
so
a
creative
question about romances in the book. How did you decide the order of the romances? Is it more of what works narratively or which characters speak to you, or both? So I guess that means like which character is featured first out of the 3. So it was like Nina, Maya, then Danny is book 3. Is it?
Yeah, we started with the mom and the dad, pretty much this time. I feel like there's 2, because we were merging 2 found families. Like, we needed the mom and the dad to, you know, basically get together, or the rest of them weren't going to trust each other. So, like, that was why Nina was first. And I think that for me, Donna might have a different answer, but Danny makes sense for third, because if you're going to, you know, when you're trying to end a trilogy, you may be doing a lot of stabbing, and there's our stabby girl. So that is my answer, literally.
I think my answer would be that we do try to consider both aspects, because you have to serve both aspects. You know, there's no point in trying to write a romance for someone who's not ready for it. And, you know, there's no delaying a romance when someone is ready for it, you know, unless you use external frustrating means. And you definitely are just making extra work for yourself if you don't consider your story arc, like with the trilogy, when you're, you know, organizing these, you know, these romances. The best thing to try to do, it's not always entirely doable, but, you know, you try to develop both aspects of those things kind of like in a parallel fashion. Like, what could we do? Like, who is going to be, you know, I think this order makes sense. Well, what could we do with those people in those romances to move the story along? Does it make sense? And so when you've got both of those things lined up, you know, you're good to go.
How about you, Tessa? Are the characters in your series like related? Are they like the romance classic of, like, you know, the Duke and then his brother and then their younger brother all in a row have their book? I've only read one of yours, so.
Oh, well, that was very sweet. I usually kind of write found families more than I write actual families. I think I had, you know, I only have one sibling, and so the dynamic of a family with, you know, 7 brothers and sisters just is something that's a little bit hard for me to grasp. So, and I came from a family of introverts, so you know, there was not a whole lot of zany interaction. So I like to write groups where it's almost like a community building over the course of the series, I think. And so the heroines of the Girl Meets Duke series mostly know one another when the series begins. Emma's a little bit new to the group, but the heroes do not. And so writing the bromances between the heroes as they kind of become reluctant friends is really fun for me. I don't know. Well, Bree and Donna, you have a very much a found family type thing going on. And I noticed that somebody in the questions mentioned Leverage too, which has sort of similar vibe. I think the person asked whether that was, I'm sorry to be stealing your job, Shelly. I was like, it just kind of connected for me in my mind. Do you guys, was Leverage on your mind at all? Do you want to talk about the whole found family thing?
I'm going to be real. Leverage is always on my mind. I mean, Leverage is not the inspiration. Oh, we got a dog behind me. Please don't mind. Leverage isn't necessarily the inspiration, but Leverage is one of my favorite shows of all time because it is exactly the sort of thing that I love. But I will say that there is a Leverage I would say shout out or like homage in the epilogue of The Devil You Know. And when you read it, you will know. And all I'm going to say is I hacked history. And so when you get to the epilogue, and if you know what that means, you know what that means. So
yeah, you know.
I do love Leverage. I love found families. I mean, that's what we do. And Tessa, that's what you do too. Like I was over here going Spindle Cove because you wrote this like wonderful Spindle Cove series where, you know,
that's my fantasy world.
The ladies who come to this town for misfits who don't fit into society, and they go and they love dinosaurs and fossils, and they go shooting and they do fun things, and all of these poor hapless men cross their paths and have to become friends and have to deal with these women who run this town because this town is their town.
Yeah.
So anybody
I mean,
who has not read Spindle Cove, you need to read it. It is like,
aw,
Yes, please go read it.
love this,
Guys,
love
so
the Tessie.
I love the mental image of the men all having to reluctantly make friends with each other. It really builds that sense of it's like a real place. Like people have to like get along.
Yeah,
They're like in a location together.
you're stuck with each
Right.
other.
they are.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
all of your wives are now best friends,
Mhm.
you're sort of stuck in all the parties together. So you either become
Right.
friends or you sit out in barns while goats are born. I mean, I know that happened in a book. I'm not
It
making it up.
did. It did. Yes.
Okay.
It did. In the Wildflower Wager. Yeah.
So-
The three heroes in the series so far have to deliver a baby goat. Yeah. It goat midwives. All right. Well, that's neither here nor there.
No,
I
tell
did
me
say
more
I
about
wanted
ghosts.
surprise goats.
Who needs a dog in a
Surprise
book with a
goats.
bit of
That's all
goat?
right. That's all right. Yeah. There's no surprise about goats in my life. It's like you could probably see 5 of them behind me. No. So
I love how the main things I know about you, Tessa, are goats and Portuguese. Sorry.
perfect.
Good branding.
You got a brand.
They are.
Perfecto. Yeah,
I am
apparently
gonna
those.
jump
Third
in
one,
with another
she loves
question.
Survivor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, Survivor.
TV.
Does the game night short go between the books, or is it best to read after book 2?
You can read it after book 1. It goes after book 1, before book 2.
Yeah, it goes between them.
It is a Nox and Nina epilogue. So,
Oh, that's short and sweet. Okay. Which scene or section brought you the most joy to write?
It's a spoiler.
there are 2 characters who I cannot name because they're big spoilers for book 1 and I don't want to spoil anyone, but we call them the Feral Barn Cat and the Winter Soldier. And they meet for the first time on a roof and knives are drawn, and it was like one of the funnest things to write. And I can't say anything more, but let me see. I'm trying to think if there's I actually did like writing. There's a scene in the beginning where Maya does a bunch of library stuff, or what is library stuff for them. And I really did enjoy.
Librarian, yeah.
I really did enjoy writing that, where she deals with the community's problems, and she finds math homework for kids, and she takes in apples that they're going to be freeze drying, and she does all the stuff that they do for this community. And I know sometimes there are people who usually aren't librarians who are like, these aren't librarians, they're not checking out books, and I'm like, no but they are kind of, because librarians do lots of things for people that aren't just late fees and so
I think our
saw a comment.
Yeah.
What
our world
someone who
needs
was like,
more.
they're not librarians.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, what our world needs right now is a lot of librarians, because the job of a librarian is to sort through and make sense of information. And we have a big problem with that right now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. There's another one. I can't really say much about it either, but there's a scene, a big fight scene, where Danny is on some dude's back, stabbing him repeatedly, and it was the most chaotic thing ever. And I was like, "Yep, this is happening." And I think Lily, who does our series Bible, was like, "Yep, big Birds of Prey vibes." Yes, exactly what I wanted. So that was a lot of fun too. I think that was the single most joyous moment.
Very
where I was
violent.
like, "Oh man!"
Joyous stabbing.
It was.
You're a perfect fit for the fantasy romance genre. It's full of stabbing. Romantic
Just a little
stabbing, even.
light stabbing.
Well,
Nothing bonds a couple like stabbing.
I think that's probably true.
Especially for the book we're writing now.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, so after writing all this post-apocalyptic stuff, what else have you been reading and watching as a palate cleanser? I guess to take your minds off dystopias.
When I am writing, like when we're drafting a book, which is basically like, when I'm writing, I don't actually like to read other fiction unless I'm going to be like taking a break from writing, because I am just like a mimic. So I will accidentally just start throwing out like turns of phrase or like little like writing tics or something. And so I'm like, no, bad, Donna, don't do that. So I read a lot of like nonfiction. The thing that I've been reading most recently is there is an ICU nurse who is on Twitter. Her name's Cassie. She wrote a book about, the last year during the pandemic. As, a nurse in an ICU, she had basically kept, a journal, and she had also aggregated her texts between her and other people, and then like the things that she had tweeted and everything. And I'm kind of slowly making my way through it because I can't read too much of it at one time. And I know that doesn't sound like taking a break from like heavy stuff. And it's not, but I felt that it was important to take that in and to, consume that little bit of our recent history. I watch a lot of stuff. I binged Ted Lasso. So that helped. That helped a lot. And I started an ER rewatch. Yeah. Oh, I love ER.
I did that with my daughter in the early stages of quarantine. Yes.
Awesome.
She got a little bit of a crush on Mr. Clooney, as she calls him. Like, didn't we all? Or like a lot of us anyway. Maybe some of us did.
My son was watching with me. My son was watching
him at the age of 20.
Yeah, Noah Wiley. Yeah.
He's still now he's on Leverage, right? So it's all good.
I love him. Noah
and being
Wiley
dog
is
bombed.
Huge crush of mine. Huge crush. I love him. And my son was actually watching, some of the ER with me, and he went straight for Wiley, man. He was like, he zeroed in on Pretty Little John Carter. He was like, no, like, who's Doug Ross? I think part of it is that like early 90s, the suits were bad. Like there was one moment, like they had George Clooney in a suit that made him like, it looked like he was wearing a circus tent.
Yes,
I was like,
so
what are you guys doing? This is freaking George Clooney and you're making him look like this. This is not good fashion. I do not approve.
My God.
But that's what I do.
The amount of arguing they do over TPE for heart attacks is just, that's a throwback.
Yeah. The fact that they still do like diagnostic peritoneal lavage. Right. Okay, yay jokes.
My husband's an ER nurse, so like I was like, but anyhow.
What about you?
I watched a lot of
Leverage.
What are you watching? I rewatched Leverage and watched the new stuff. I've been watching the CW's Nikita again because I absolutely love that show. It got very terrible marketing, but it was just like a show about 3 generations of women fighting for control while hot men took off their shirts around them and did whatever they wanted. It did not look like that from the promo, but it was actually sort of an amazing show about these 3 women like battling for each other's souls. I got very blurry all of a sudden. Oh well, camera.
Is that the one with Maggie Q?
Yes. Yes, she is fairly amazing. And I made a bunch of little books. So
was that the Jasmine Throne that you just held up?
Let's
I feel like I can recognize it at the size of like a postage stamp. I just knew.
Tiny books.
So amazing.
So, I haven't done the 3rd one yet, but I'm gonna.
If we're talking about fantasy romance, then Tasha Suri writes like some of the best fantasy romance in the business. I wouldn't call it comfort reading, but I read a lot of Tasha's books during the coronavirus as well.
Yeah, I was Empire of Sand was like amazing, and then Realm of Ash like tore my heart into little pieces. So then I like read the Jasmine Throne and I was like, I knew what I was in for and I still wasn't ready. So it was so good.
Yeah.
So
It's completely immersive. The emotions like sweep you away. You just get completely caught up, and it's also really tactile as well. So it takes you out of your own body. So you're not sitting in your dingy little house in lockdown, but you're in this like whole different world. It's great.
This intense world. Yeah, I told her she's the reason I like fell back in love with fantasy, and now I have to like have this proposal. so Tasha has dragged me back into the genre of my youth. So,
Tasha's the one who says she needs to start a fantasy romance imprint, and I'm all for it. Because like currently fantasy romances are coming out, like there's a couple from Tor and a couple from Orbit, like the fantasy imprints. I just like gather them all together and I'd be there.
Dominate
just
the
like how
world.
horror has its own imprint.
So, I've also been reading all my Nalini Singh because I never stop reading Nalini Singh. I do love to reread her books. I know that some of our little Discord people are in the chat, and we have a
Little
whole
Discord
channel.
people.
Little Discord people. We have a channel. We have several Nalini Singh channels. Because we're constantly dragging new people in to read the series to entertain us with their live reactions. Because that is, if you can't read a series for the first time, you can live vicariously by someone else who is reading the series for the first time. So
I like how someone in the comments is saying that all the fanfic writers of the 90s have become published authors. So that's how we've got all the fantasy romance coming out like right now.
I totally think that's what is causing this like romance fantasy convergence. I think that like all the fanfic authors are like, yeah, I don't care if you make fun of the romance. I'm still gonna write it. So.
I think also the gatekeepers, people who grew up in fandom as well, like on AO3. I know a lot of the fantasy editors are kind of like, I've seen you around on the internet on like Archive of Our Own. I know you're my people and you speak my language. And they're the ones who are starting to select out the books that have that fantasy but romance kind of convergence feel that's so catnipy.
The shippers are taking over the world.
Yeah, fangirls. Yeah, we're gonna rule the world for sure.
Sorry, I got distracted for a second. But did we all? I know Bree and Donna, you met writing fanfic, right?
Yes, we did.
Right, and I wrote
20
fanfic
years ago.
And Shelly, did you write fanfic?
We're on. Oh yeah, I think everyone.
Or do you still?
Because when I was going on sub, and then I had my like chat with the editor, and they said, "How do you learn to write?" And I was really cagey. I was like, "Oh, there was this online internet writing community I was a part of," and they're like, "Oh, you can just say you wrote fanfic."
Just say it.
I did.
It is. It's a bit like 20 years ago how it felt to say you met someone online, a romantic partner. It feels a little
across
awkward.
the country to live with Donna after meeting her writing fanfic in 2001. And let me tell you, that was not a done thing. Everyone was like, she and her family are going to murder you. And I was like, okay, well.
Spoiler alert.
So, yes. I have not written a fanfic in a while. My last one was a Dragon Age fanfic, which is on AO3 under a secret name, which...
we'll find it. We'll hunt you down.
Is there. It's quite popular. It's very dirty.
I already see someone in the chat was saying that they knew who my pseudonym is. I'm like, how do you know? Like
they'll find you.
How do they? Yeah. I think we're out of questions. Oh, there's one last question. Do you want me to ask the one last question?
Sure. Because I know what LB's asking.
Maybe we're out of time. Or my part is over. Do you discuss potential future stories that exist outside the trilogy and start building them early on? Like Conal? I don't know. Sorry.
So, this was a different process for us because this is the first time we've ever sold something to a traditional publisher. When we're self-publishing, we just have control over how many we write or don't write.
Right.
So this time we planned 3 things, but now we're getting to the end of the 3 things, and we don't get to decide if we write more. I mean, people buying lots of books maybe will make Tor want more, so that if Tor wants more, we have more, and Connell is someone we have more for. So we did not plan those exactly, but we have now planned at least 2 more that we're going to pitch. So everybody, I guess, cross your fingers and buy the book, and maybe Connell can get his happily ever after with spoilers.
Yeah, Connell's thing was not planned from the beginning. It was like one of those things where we were like, eventually I was like, hey, I can think of someone who would be perfect for him. And then I did.
And that brings me to the perfect segue of, if you want 2 more books, it's the time to point. And there is the purchase book button link down below. And you can go and purchase the Devil You Know and get the absolutely amazing swag pack that they have sent. Because you guys really, like, I know I already said this, but the necklace that Brie and Donna made is so stinking cool that you get when you order the book. Plus, it's a fabulous book with badass freaking mercenary librarians and all of the amazing things. But I am back on screen because unfortunately we are at the hour mark, so I have the villainous role of having to come online and end the event. But I want to thank, and Tessa, I think the dog barking was okay. You don't have to mute yourself.
We all love Loki.
I think he got a shout out in the comments. But I want to thank you guys so much. Donna, Bree, Tessa, and Shelly, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I personally had a lot of fun listening to you guys, and I know our audience did as well from all the great comments. So thank you all for all of the book love. Keep it coming. Like I said, the Devil You Know, as well as book 1 and Tessa's book and Shelly's book is available for pre-order at the purchase book link down below. We will see you all next time. Once again, happy book birthday, and thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
us
everybody.
tonight.
Thank you for having
Shelley
us.
and Tessa.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for having us.
So
Thank you,
much.
audience.
Thank you all. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.